It was a December evening in Montgomery, Alabama, when the sun hung low over the streets and the city moved in the same rhythm it always had, but beneath that rhythm something restless stirred inside a woman whose name would one day echo across history. Her name was Rosa Parks. She walked with tired feet after hours of work, her hands worn, her mind calm. She stepped onto a city bus where faces were divided by color, where seats were symbols of silence. She did not know that this simple ride home would change the world forever. The air inside the bus carried a weight, an old invisible rule that told some to stand and others to sit. But that evening Rosa's heart carried another kind of rule, the rule of dignity, the rule of peace and truth. She sat down in a row reserved for black passengers. The bus rolled forward through the dusty streets, the hum of the engine mixed with the sound of thoughts too long unspoken. And when the bus filled, more white passengers entered, and the driver looked back with the same command that had been given 1,000 times before he told her to move, so that someone else could sit. She looked at him, not with anger, not with fear, but with a stillness that came from years of being told she was less than she was. She breathed deeply and said a word that would tremble the walls of injustice. She said no. That word was small, but it carried the weight of generations behind it. It was not a shout, it was a whisper of courage, a silent storm. Her refusal was not born from hatred, but from exhaustion, from the quiet pain of always giving way. Her body stayed still, yet her soul stood taller than ever before. And in that moment time seemed to pause. The bus driver called the police. They took her away. Her hands restrained, her head held high, but the city would never move the same again. That night as she sat in custody, her name began to move from one voice to another. People whispered Rosa Parks had been arrested for sitting down, and soon the whisper became a roar across Montgomery. Something was awakening, something ancient and righteous. The people were tired of bending their backs, tired of being told to wait for a better day. They saw in Rosa the reflection of their own quiet suffering, and they decided they would not ride those buses anymore. The next morning the streets of Montgomery were filled not with wheels but with footsteps, men and women walking to work, children walking to school, ministers walking beside laborers, old women walking with heavy bags yet with light hearts. They walked for Rosa, they walked for themselves, they walked for freedom. The boycott began as a spark but grew into a fire that refused to die. Day after day the buses rolled half empty, their drivers staring out at a city that no longer obeyed fear. For 381 days they walked through rain, through cold, through exhaustion, each step a protest, each mile a prayer, and Rosa watched as her single act of defiance became a movement that could no longer be ignored. She was not leading from a stage or a microphone, she led from a chair on a bus, from a place of quiet strength. Her calm became contagious, her silence became sound. The authorities tried to break the spirit of the people. They arrested leaders, they threatened jobs, they spread lies, but the walkers kept walking because Rosa's courage had reminded them who they truly were, not passengers of oppression but travelers of faith. They had nothing yet they carried everything that mattered, the will to be free. In those long months Rosa faced ridicule and hardship. Her husband worried for their safety, their phones rang with threats, their names were spoken with hate, yet she remained unbroken, her heart guided by something larger than fear. She knew that courage is not the absence of fear, it is choosing to act while fear breathes down your neck. She held that truth like a lantern in the dark. Then came the day when the highest court in the land spoke the words that ended segregation on Montgomery buses. The boycott had won, justice had listened. The city that once forced her to move now stood still before her courage. She had not raised her voice, she had raised the world. Rosa Parks became the mother of a movement, but she never sought fame, she never chased the title of hero. She said she just wanted to be treated like anyone else, yet her quiet grace became a monument stronger than stone. The story of Rosa Parks is not only a story about race or law, it is the story of human dignity, of how one soul can change the rhythm of an entire nation. She showed that peace can be a weapon, that stillness can shake an empire, that silence can speak louder than noise. Her action reminded humanity that every great change begins not with anger but with conscience. As the years passed, her story was told in classrooms and books, her face printed on murals and stamps, but the essence of her courage cannot be captured by ink. It lives in the breath of every person who refuses to bow before injustice. It lives in the hearts of those who know that quiet resistance is louder than rage. It lives wherever people remember that one person can make a stand without lifting a fist. When the world talks about bravery, it often imagines soldiers or kings or revolutions painted in fire, but Rosa Parks showed another kind of bravery, the bravery of peace, the bravery of endurance. She taught that power does not always wear a crown, sometimes it sits quietly on a bus holding a purse and waiting to get home. Her stillness became a mirror to a restless world. The stoic truth she embodied is simple but eternal. We do not control the cruelty of others, we only control our response to it. She chose dignity over despair, peace over panic. Her calm became her rebellion. She did not fight with fists, she fought with faith. Her victory was not in the courtroom, but in the hearts of millions who saw her and remembered that they too could stand up by sitting still. Imagine the world through her eyes, that evening, the city buzzing around her, the weight of history pressing upon her shoulders, yet inside her heart the stillness of a mountain. She knew that if she gave in she would lose something sacred within herself, and so she did not move. She chose the harder path, the lonelier one, the one carved not by rage but by conviction, and that choice rippled outward across decades, across oceans. Her moment of defiance became the blueprint of courage for generations to come. Today, when people stand for justice, when they march for equality, when they speak truth to power, even when their voices tremble, they are walking in the shadow of Rosa Parks. They are continuing the silent revolution she began on that bus, the revolution that says no more, not because of hate, but because of love. Love for dignity, love for humanity, love for peace. There are times when life asks us to move along, to stay silent, to compromise with wrong, but Rosa reminds us that there is a time to stay seated, a time to refuse, and in that refusal to rediscover the strength that lives quietly inside us. She reminds us that even the smallest act of courage can echo across time like thunder. She did not wait for permission to be brave, she simply was. The city of Montgomery has changed. The buses no longer divide passengers. The world has turned many times since that winter evening, yet her spirit remains unshaken. Her name spoken softly in classrooms and streets, her story whispered to children before bed, not as a tale of rebellion, but as a lesson in humanity. Rosa Parks sits in the memory of the world like a quiet flame that never burns out. Her courage was not born in a single moment. It was forged by years of endurance, by countless days of injustice that could not steal her soul. Her story teaches us that true strength does not always shout. Sometimes it breathes slowly, it waits, it endures, and when the right moment comes, it simply says no. If we listen closely, we can still hear the echo of that bus engine, the shuffle of footsteps, the heartbeat of a woman who decided that enough was enough. Her quiet stand was a message to the ages that peace without justice is not peace, that silence without truth is not harmony. Her act reminds us that courage begins in the heart long before it reaches the world. In a world still divided, still wrestling with hate and fear, Rosa Parks remains a guide, a symbol of what it means to stand firm without violence, to resist without rage. She teaches us that strength wrapped in humility is stronger than pride wrapped in power. She shows that one soul rooted in truth can outweigh an empire built on lies. Every time someone refuses to surrender their dignity, every time someone speaks up against unfairness, every time someone says no to fear, Rosa's spirit rises again, because her courage was never just hers, it belonged to everyone who dares to live with integrity. She sat down, but she lifted all of us. And so her story continues. It lives in the steps of those who march for justice, in the hearts of those who teach kindness, in the voices of those who refuse to hate. It lives in the still moments before a decision, when a person takes a breath and chooses what is right over what is easy. That is the legacy of Rosa Parks, the woman who sat down to stand up for freedom. And when your own time comes, when the world asks you to move from what you know is right, remember her calm, remember her strength, remember that power need not be loud to be eternal. Sit still in your truth, hold your peace like a shield, and let your courage speak without words, for true power whispers, and its echo never fades.